a year, probably more, I was in the market for a G21. Always looking for the one, always looking for the perfect colour, the perfect spec. You know the drill, you know the drill. And I had big expectations to live up to. Julie and I, without going into huge amounts of, sheep the road, history, basically we have driven 3 Series Tourers for 20 odd years. Yes, I'm actually that old, would you believe it? E46, E90, we had multiples of each. The last car was an F31 335 diesel, but my favourite so far has been a 330d two-wheel drive, passive suspension, no pan roof. It handled sublime, it didn't need anything doing to it, it was so light on its toes. That was the car that I will remember most fondly out of everyone that we've had so far. I hoped within an inch of my driving life that this car would live up to it, and I wasn't sure. It took a good few drives in this M340d to finally bond to it. Initially, it feels big, and for me, that's an X against it straight away. The F31 never felt small and neat, like an E46. It's not going to, it's a bigger car, but this felt like a more substantial step up in terms of space, in bulk, if I'm being bluntly honest. So that initially made me think, I don't think I've made the right choice, and it is a substantial wedge of cash to go from a good spec, late plated, nice mileage F31 to a G21 M340d. You are looking at about a £10,000, probably more, uplift in price. So this car has got to deliver. Now, where it starts to deliver is in the interior first and foremost. The architecture, the layout, the dash, the fit and finish, how everything all feels in here is infinitely more expensive feeling, and all of a sudden you start to realise that this is a more expensive car than the old one because it feels like they've put more into the car itself. The old F31, 330 and 335 drove fantastic, but the insides weren't great. Everything, you know, if you pushed and prodded at the right areas, it kind of creaked and made noises that you just would not expect from a premium brand car like BMW. You have got no worries of that with the new G21. So what's it like to drive? Gone is my favourite steering wheel, the old beautiful retro-esque 3-spoke with the slender spokes, perfect girth, perfect size. We've now got this new steering wheel which is not as good as the old one. The spokes are quite bulky, it just feels more clunky in hand than the old one. The seats are nice, I don't think they hold you in as well as the old seats. The paddles have got a nice weight to them. We've got nice PFT displays in the binnacle, and iDrive has also had a much needed uplift upgrade as well. The LCIs, this is all just one screen, but this is a pre-LCI, it's a 21 plate, so we've got two separate displays which are very nice, very intuitive to drive. You can configure the main binnacle to deliver the information that you want. Right now we're in comfort, which we'll talk about in a minute. So we've got a percentage of power used, and then when you put it into sport you then get back the traditional rev counter. On the rev counter it goes backwards. Now I'm really going to show my age here. Back in the Mark III Escort, XR3i and XR3, the rev counter went backwards. That's the only other car that I can remember having a reverse rev counter, which it takes a bit of getting used to. But in this car, in this M340d, you do not need to look at the rev counter, because it doesn't matter where the engine sits in the rev range. When you accelerate, this thing takes off like an absolute rocket. Now, this is also an MHT car, which stands for mild hybrid technology, which is a 48 volt system, and it basically plugs any perceived, it basically plugs any perceived torque gap, so you have got no turbo lag. I mean, if you go hunting for it, you'll find it, but in day-to-day driving there is no turbo lag. The other thing that the MHT cars have brings in the stop start so smoothly that now I don't hate it, which is good, because in the MHT cars you can't actually turn the start stop off. This is the first car that I've ever driven with stop start technology, which has been with us for what, 10 years more, that you can't actually switch it off. Now you can fiddle about, if you put the car into manual it stops it, if you put the car into Sport Plus it also stops it as well, but it's the first car that it comes in and out but so smoothly, and that's because these cars don't have a starter motor. They've actually got a motor that runs the hybrid system. So when you accelerate, that motor runs the flywheel and gives you that extra bit of power, but it also brings the engine back into life rather than having to rely on a starter motor. So that in itself is quite nice to have. On the driving modes, as I mentioned earlier, we've got put the car into sport, it turns the start stop off. We've got sport, sport plus, comfort, and eco pro mode. Eco pro mode, as far as I'm concerned, gives you this tiny little bit of extra fuel economy on a really, really long run, but it does daft things like it turns the air conditioning off and all that sort of stuff. I really think if you're going to buy an M340d, you're never going to use that. Comfort is the default driving mode, which is fine for just potting about, but it starts getting a bit, the car actually starts to feel quite heavy on its springs when you're on a nice road. Sport, if you put the sport on and you have it configured with the sport suspension, it's actually really, really stiff. However, this is the reason why I did not gel with the M340d until I actually drove it to Brighton and back. And in the last 100 miles, depending on where you are in the country, you may or may not know, but there's a section of the M74 motorway that flows beautifully as we climb up the ascent. I think it's about Abington. It was late at night and I was having a fiddle about. As you do in a car when you're quite bored and you've been on a long journey, and I thought, I'm going to try adaptive. I put the adaptive mode in and it was a complete revelation, if I'm honest. Now, I have done some reviewing, I've done a wee bit of research. Some people are the tease out, if you like, with adaptive mode, but in my opinion, when you put the car in adaptive, you don't need sport, you don't need sport plus, and you definitely don't need comfort, and you don't need eco pro mode. It adjusts the car not only to your driving style, but it also adjusts the car to the road you're on based on the data that's saved in the car's navigation system. Just let that sink in for a second. So this car knows right now that we're on a B road. In a minute when we start giving it some send, it'll know that I'm driving more aggressively, because it takes in the speed of the steering as well as the angle. It takes in account the speed of the acceleration, angle changes, the throttle openings, as well as the amount of throttle. Why would you not have the car use all that information to improve your driving experience? It's comfier than comfort, it's not as jarring as sport, and the car, the best way I can describe it is this car that feels like it breathes with the road. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm probably going to get adaptive coded so that that's the main mode when we get in this car to drive it. Back to how the car drives. Let's get it down a few gears, put it into manual, but to be honest, it really doesn't matter what gear you're in, but we'll put it down into second. We'll give it a go. ZF box doing its thing as it always does. You can actually feel the power. You can feel the steering tightening up as it's dealing with the 516 foot-pounds of torque. That's a lot, especially when you put that together with 340 odd horsepower. We've got a bit of a split, 60-40 front and back, depending on if you've got the car in sport or if you've got the car in comfort, or as we have at the minute, we've got it in adaptive. But this also has an M rear differential, which it's so cool. We've got a diesel, we've got M Sport diff, we've got big brakes, we've got adaptive suspension. You know, it's just such a complete package. The 3 Series Touring has always been our family's go-to car. I love driving it, Julie loves driving it. It's dead practical. They're unbelievably cheap to run for the performance that you get. Yeah, they're more expensive to buy than the 2 litre, but I give you 5 minutes in a 3 litre car and you would never consider a 2 litre. They're definitely worth the uplift. So just letting the traffic go a wee bit further up the road before we carry on back up this country road at a wee bit more of a spirited pace. So we'll put the car into first and we'll get on with it. Let's go. It's just relentless wall of torque. This wee nice right left here. They remember we're on the old winter Verdestein tyres. We had this car on Pirelli P0s when we first bought it and they were run flats. Within a week they were off. Set a Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's on non-run flats and the ride control, the ride comfort was on a different level. It didn't feel like it was all scaly and horrible and picking up every little imperfection in the road. Yeah. You sometimes need to remind yourself that you're in a diesel. I mean, diesels have been fast for a long, long time, but it's not just the speed. It's how the car feels under your backside as well. That's fine hum from the straight 6 diesel. I know you can get these in an M340i, but would you trade 500 or 600 miles per tank for one that's maybe going to do 300? It's not just that. I think a car like this, you know, it isn't a sports car. You're not buying it to bash up and down B roads, albeit it's a nice, you know, it's a nice ability to have. It's a daily car, and and a nice torquey diesel just suits the driving style of these cars so much better. It's a big puddle. We had a lot of rain recently, so we need to watch for road conditions. I was out in the car not long after we got it, and I noticed the wee button just on the stock, and I thought, oh brilliant, adaptive lights, because you know you're getting to know all the nuances and all the gadgets and the gizmos and all the bits and bobs, and I pressed it and this came up. I'll just give you a second to read that. I have read about this on the internet, but this is my first time having the experience of being squeezed for more money after spending a not insignificant amount of money on the actual car itself. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the world of your car's got it, but because you've paid for the car, it doesn't mean that you've actually got the use of it. Thank you, BMW. I have got a subscription service, high beam assist, built into my new M340d. That was a bit of a bummer. That being said, I would have been slightly more annoyed if that applied to things like the Harman Kardon and the heated seats. I think we can live without the adaptive high beam assist for the time being. BMW's argument is that it opens up the car to many people when you come to sell it, because the next one might want it and they can quite happily pay for it. But anyway, I'm rambling on about the subscription service. What I would like to know is, what do you guys think about having a car that's got stuff on it that won't work until you've given BMW £20 a month or whatever it is. So in summary, the F31 was a car that I really enjoyed. We've enjoyed all our 330s and 335s over the years. The M340d had a big set of boots to fill. It really did. I think it's a much more grown up feeling car. I think it's a much more expensive feeling car, but I still can't get away from the fact that it feels like it drives like a bigger car. The adaptive mode is a revelation in terms of ride comfort and how the car feels in the corners. It's almost like it knows that there's a corner coming up and it stiffens the suspension up. It really is like black magic. But for me, that was a game changer. Before that point, I was actually missing the F31 and how it drove. In the looks department, these have got every previous model covered. BMWs are usually a bit of a grower. You know, you don't immediately bond with them as soon as you see them in the press. But as soon as the G series came out, it was, in my opinion, it was an instant hit. It's such a muscular, beautifully sculpted car. There's not a bad angle from it. I love the way the back wheel arch carries on into the door. That, you know, those kind of things. Next year, I will more than likely do the Motec route with it. I've watched the videos. We've had a couple of cars in it. I've had the Motec stance kit, which is like spacers and springs, but to their spring rates, so it doesn't ruin the ride control. Because standard, I think these cars look a little bit underwheeled. You know, the body looks almost a little bit too big for the offset of the standard wheels, but that can all be fixed. And I would be delighted to come back and revisit it once we've done that in the new year. So guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you very much for making it to the end. If you would like to see more videos if you'd like to see more review videos, there'll be a playlist up here. But can I also suggest this video down here? If you're into BMWs, you might like this supercharged E46 M3 video. That might be just up your street. Until next time, guys, have a great Christmas, and I shall see you in the next video. Thanks again. Bye bye.